Good evening. I'm John Bailey. This is People to Be Heard, the program where people who have something to say have their say. Tonight, you have Cora Greenberg. She's Executive Director of the Westchester Children's Association. She has had that position for since 1994. Welcome to the program, first of all. And she is here to talk about a real issue that cropped up the last two weeks in White Plains and the county, and that is the decision by the county to stage a gun show at the county center at the end of January. Right. And this has been met with interesting opposition by the county legislators who are going to vote on whether or not to veto this whole deal,
right,
and whether to not approve it. Right. So anyway, just a little background. You are a social worker and an educator. You joined the WCA as executive director in '94. You have an MSW degree from Hunter School of Social Work and an MSED in elementary education. You know quite a bit about children, and you advocate strenuously for them. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Westchester Children's Association, and are you lobbyist or are you service organization or combo?
Well, we're really more of a lobbyist organization, and our clients that we lobby for are the children of Westchester. And that gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility and independence. We do not accept any funding from the county, and so we are able to pursue our mission. And our mission is that every child in Westchester should be healthy, safe, and prepared for life's challenges. And the way we do that as advocates is, first of all, we find out what's going on with children. We collect and publish a lot of data about children in Westchester. And when I say children, I mean birth through young adult. So it's the whole age range. We put out a lot of information, as I said, data and other information, and then we try to identify areas for improvement. Then we bring together lots of partners from the nonprofit world, government, ordinary citizens who help us figure out what's the best way to respond to the problems that we've identified. And then we mobilize people to push for those changes. So that's kind of the breadth of what we do.
Okay. So getting back to the main reason why you agreed to come on is that you and your organization are very concerned about, this gun show that is coming up, I believe, on January 21st.
Yeah, I think it's the 21st.
Like and why?
The gun show is, you just pointed out to me before we started talking on the air that there are 40 gun shows within a week or a month in New York State. Gun shows are legal. Guns are legal, and we totally accept that. But the use of guns and gun violence is really posing a public health threat to all of us, and particularly to children. And we feel that it's really an inappropriate use of public county facility to host a show like this. In 2012, in 1999, former county executive Andy Spano banned gun shows. And in 2012, our current county executive, Rob Astorino, did the same thing. He was doing it in response to the shooting at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, because he knew that symbolically it was a bad thing. It was an injurious thing to have that show. My opinion, our opinion, is that gun violence epidemic hasn't stopped. Every 36 hours in the United States, a child is unintentionally using a gun to shoot or injure themselves or somebody else. That's an epidemic that we really have to respond to, and I think the county has an opportunity here to use its public face, if you will, which I think the county center is, in a more productive way to not promote the use of guns.
To not promote the use of guns. Is there anything of late that the gun show entrepreneurs that stage these shows, have they adjusted the shows to have any emphasis whatsoever on safe use of guns, responsible use?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I do know that New York State has very strong laws, to make the gun shows as responsible as possible. We do have background checks in New York State at gun shows, and we do have only licensed purveyors. And that's not true around the country necessarily. So that's a good thing. But again, for us, it's really more of a question of a public statement by the county. Again, in response to Newtown, our county executive launched something that he calls the Safer Communities Initiative. And it's a whole broad range of responses to try to make our communities safer. And it's great. It's a terrific thing, and it's had a lot of legs, if you will, over the last few years. This seems to be in the opposite direction, and I think it would be more in keeping with the Safer Communities Initiative of our county executive for us not to be hosting this show. There are other things that we could be doing, and we do with that county center, that are much more sort of pro-social benefit, if you will.
Has the administration of the county given opponents any explanation why they decided to do this show?
Not that I've heard. No. I mean, I think, it's kind of a business decision more than anything. The county has an asset that they use to generate tourism and generate income. I don't think they're going to be making so much money on this, but that's what they use the county center for, and it's in the purview of the administration to do that. That's part of what the county administration does, is manage that facility. Right. So, it's sort of the opposite of, the Westchester Knicks are there, and their big push is it's family friendly, let's bring families there and have it be this wholesome environment. And then right outside you have these gigantic banners that say Gun and Knife Show. It's a sort of a mixed message to me.
Right. It is an interesting situation considering the atmosphere in the country today.
I think with guns, we're kind of where we were with smoking 25 years ago. Something that's legal, something that was, readily available to everybody. And slowly people became more aware of smoking as a public health problem. And I think that's the right approach that we should take with guns, is to look at how can we mitigate the harm while still maintaining the legality of people's ownership. And there are things that can be done, but right now we haven't gotten very far in that direction. But I think we will get there. The same thing happened with automobiles, which when they first came out were really not regulated. And over time, as they've become safer, requiring seatbelts,
controversy.
It was a controversy when it came, and now we all just know it's there.
Well, I don't see why that when guns are sold at these gun shows, they do not automatically force them to have some sort of a lock that only the actual owner
That's a very common sense solution.
And I mean, I just don't know, but I was thinking last night about things that the gun show entrepreneurs could do. They could have an absolute safety psychological whole seminar going on while the show is going on, particularly for the younger people that attend this show, whatever. But
I think there are lots of ways that we could be helping guns to be a safer part of the community, if they're going to be part of the community, to make sure that they are stored safely. One of the things that Westchester can be proud of, and we are proud to have been part of getting this law passed, we have in our county what's called a child access protection law, and it's also called a safe storage law. We have a law on the books that if you own a gun, it must be stored in your home, locked and separate from the ammunition, etc. New York City has a law like that, but I don't think any place else in New York State has that law. So that's terrific. That's a great thing that we have.
It's somewhat unenforceable, though.
It is somewhat unenforceable, but when you go to get a permit renewal in Westchester County, you have to affirm that you are storing your gun safely. At least it gets it in your mind, as you were saying, in terms of when people are buying a gun, what kind of public education can we do? There's another little piece that I just want to mention that we've been involved with for a while. It's a national campaign every year called Asking Saves Kids, the Ask campaign. And what that does is try to encourage parents, when they send their children to play in someone else's home, to ask, do you have a gun, and is it stored safely? Because that's where a lot of these unintentional, accidental things happen. People think, I've got the gun on the top of the closet, the kid doesn't know where it is. The kids always know where it is. They know exactly where it is.
Really?
And the surveys have shown that, mostly children under the age of 11, for example, or under the age of 10, 75% of them know exactly where the gun is. So, and it's a tempting thing to play with. And so there's a lot of these accidental, unintentional injuries and deaths that occur because young kids get their hands on a loaded gun, which of course should never happen. But parents are more apt to ask, are you serving anything with peanuts because my kid has an allergy? What kind of videos are you letting your kids watch? But this is a really life and death situation, and we want it to become easier for parents to ask that question.
Now, a big part of so many youth shootings is the carrying of illegal handguns and the ability to get illegal handguns in New York State. And Virginia Perez, the legislator who put out a press release this week pointing out that her brother was shot by a person wielding a handgun that was illegal when he was delivering pizza 10 years ago. And that really struck me because but she points out that only half of the persons arrested for illegal possession do the full amount of time. They get plea bargained. Now, is there anything that your organization is thinking about lobbying judges to be stiffer? Because it's the lawyers that are the problem.
It's the lawyers. Lawyers' job is to advocate for their clients, and they're doing their job. So, that's our system. That's the way it's set up. There are certainly illegal guns that come into the New York area, as we know, most of them through straw purchases in certain southern states. So there's a lot of issues there. We're focusing mostly on the public health aspect of gun violence, and there are studies that show that you can almost watch how violence spreads almost like a virus, almost like an illness. So there's lots of work that can be done just on that side without worrying about the criminal justice side, but really on the public health side to protect our communities and particularly children, who of course are our clients.
Right, but the enforcing the possession laws feeds into another subject that you were advocating in your organization, and that is trying to get the old Rockefeller drug laws, which are still on the books, which treat 16 and 17-year-olds or younger as felons.
Well,
could you tell us about this issue?
Sure, and this is part of something that was called the Raise the Age campaign, and I'll just correct you a little bit because it's this age, right now New York State is one of only 2 states in the country where 16 is the age of adult criminal responsibility. That means that if you are arrested from the age of 16 on, you are treated as an adult. If my son is arrested and he is at the police station and he's 16, I don't get a phone call. You would not get a phone call if your child at that age, because that child is considered an adult. We in North Carolina, those are the only 2 states. Everybody else is at 17, most people are at 18. Now, this issue for New York State predates the Rockefeller drug laws.
I didn't know that.
This was set up early on as it was supposed to be a temporary measure because they couldn't figure out what age to make it, so they said, all right, we'll leave it at 16. And every time it's come up, it has been impossible to move for various reasons, some of which during the era of the Rockefeller drug laws was, we got to be tough on crime, all this stuff. I would also point out that younger than 16 in New York State, if for certain crimes, the judge has the authority with the prosecutor, they can decide to prosecute even a younger person as an adult in the adult court. So there's always that option. What this campaign, the Raise the Age campaign, is trying to do is to say the default for a 16 and 17-year-old should be to be treated and their case should be handled in family court rather than adult criminal court. Now, the reason that that's important, there are several reasons it's important. And the wonderful thing is that we have great data from the other states that have already done this. So we know that when you treat 16 and 17-year-olds as juveniles and bring them into the family court and assess their whole situation, and when it's appropriate, provide services in addition to punishment, you get a few outcomes. First of all, the young people do much better. They're not being jailed and treated as adults. They're not being exposed to the hardened criminals, et cetera, in that environment. The second thing is that they actually have a lower recidivism rate. They are much less likely, when treated in the juvenile system, to re-offend. So you're reducing crime. And over time, and depends on the state, but you start to save money because it is actually less expensive to provide services that keep young people out of jails and prisons than it is to house them in jails and prisons. So it's a win-win for everybody. Better for the kid and better for the community.
Where are you on this issue? How
so
is
this has
Albany
been
responding?
Yeah. So this was originally 2 years ago. I believe I'm losing track of time now, but a couple of years ago, the governor proposed this as a priority, and he appointed a special commission, which included our then DA, Janet DeFiore, who is now the chief judge of the state, to study this question and make recommendations on how to move forward. They made those recommendations, and the governor included in his budget and in his budget package 2 years ago legislation that would change the law, that would essentially change the law to make the 16 and 17-year-olds still treated as juveniles and the 18-year-olds automatically treated as adults. This is the default option. The legislature did a funny thing. They passed the money that would be required to make this change, but they didn't pass the law. They did the same thing the next year. Now we're into the third year of this proposal. There's a big coalition around the state, and it's really gaining momentum. Last week there was a group of clergy from around the state that went up to Albany to do a press conference. We had a letter that we sent last spring from 38 clergy members just in Westchester to the governor and legislative leaders urging this change. We've had a lot of conversations over the years because we're kind of the Westchester lead organization for this statewide coalition with the probation department, with law enforcement, and so we're really exploring and trying to find the way to make this change so that it will be practical, that it will not upend the law enforcement. They won't have their hands tied behind their backs, that it will be an effective way to do it. And again, we have many models from other states. But so it's looking like, and the other new development is that the Independent Democratic Caucus in the state Senate, which is led by Senator Jeff Klein, who represents part of Lower Westchester. Another member from Westchester is David Carlucci, who represents Rockland and a little piece of Westchester around Ossining. They are both members of the IDC, Independent Democratic Caucus, and they kind of are the swing votes in the state Senate. They have come out just a few days ago to say that this is going to be a priority for them in this new session. So that's very encouraging, and we hope that something will move.
Now, once you get in trouble at 16 and 17 committing a felony,
right,
and this law goes into effect, and you're no longer charged with a felony or whatever, I don't know how they would do it, but what is the after attention given to these individuals?
Right.
It's up to the courts. You have to attend community service or something.
Well,
is
there's
there
a
going
huge
to be
range of options available to the judge. That's the nice thing about family court. They can really evaluate, and the purpose of family court is to, meet the best interests of the child, the perpetrator who is still considered a child. They can remand that person to a secure facility for juveniles. They can, there's a huge range of things they can do, including community-based punishment, but also services. Services to the family, services, depending on what is needed. And again, every situation is different. But it's not about letting kids get away with things. That's what some people are worried about. That's not what this is.
That's why I asked the question.
No, I know. And that's not what this is. In fact, one of the early groups that objected to the change, believe it or not, were the defense attorneys who represent young people in the criminal court. And you say, why are they against this? Because in the criminal court, as you mentioned earlier around the gun charges, The job of the attorney is to get their client as little punishment as possible. And when they have a 16 or 17-year-old in the criminal court, they are often able to make a deal, get that young person off, so to speak, with very minimal sorts of repercussions. Whereas in the family court, the judge has much more opportunity to say, you know what, I think you need to be in juvenile probation for 3 years. You need supervision. You need to go to a facility, and they can make them stay there till they're 21. So there's a lot more, actually can be a lot harsher responses than sometimes happen in the other side. So you get both ends of the spectrum in the criminal court. You can have very harsh and very inappropriate responses, and you can also have responses that don't really respond, that are just kind of not dealing with the fact that here's a young person on their way to big trouble.
Yeah, we had a couple of bystander shootings in, I believe, Mount Vernon the last couple of weeks. And my question is, say somebody is caught with an illegal handgun, you know, he's a juvenile.
Right.
And how does that crime get treated?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole point. Do you go into prison for the killing, or what?
Well,
I mean, that's a big question.
It's a big question, but the judge, even now, for people younger than 16, has the authority to decide, you know what, this is such a bad crime that it needs to be handled in criminal court. It needs to be handled on the adult side. They can already do that with really egregious situations. You know, people who do stuff that's not an accident, it's not, they were part of whatever. I mean, they can take all the factors into consideration.
Not an accident, but an intentional
An
act.
intentional.
Yeah.
And right now, the judges already have that responsibility and the authority to recommend.
Incarcerate or whatever.
Well, they can decide where the case is going to be heard.
I see.
And even if it is heard in family court as a juvenile, they could incarcerate that person in a secure facilities, because there are secure facilities for juveniles as well as for adults.
Before I get into the last segment that I want to do, could you tell people where to go to find out more about your organization?
Thank you.
And who to call?
Well, the best way to find out about our organization is to check out our website, which is at www.wca4kids.org. So it's wca4kids.org. There's a lot of information about our work, but it's also a place that people can find out how to contact us directly and can sign up for our action alerts. For example, things like this gun show legislation that's going to be voted on Monday. There's information on our website about where you can go to speak up about this legislation, how you can contact your elected officials if you want to speak with them directly about your views. And so we try to have a lot of information there for people who want to get involved and want to be active on issues.
Right. Now, you're also working with Westchester and Putnam counties to make young persons workforce ready. Here in White Plains, we've opened a training center recently in the first Winbrook building. How do your programs work and reach out to the persons that need this sort of training?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a beautiful facility in White Plains. It's really very impressive. So our work is with, again, it's kind of a little consortium, including the Workforce Development Agency for Westchester and Putnam, and the Business Council of Westchester and us, and other partners who work directly with young people. Our part of the project is to develop materials that are kind of PR materials. So there's a curriculum that's going to be developed, that has been developed rather, that will be available through local youth bureaus, local youth organizations. So young people will come and start to think about, not about a specific job, but about the qualities and the attributes that are necessary for any job. Responsibility, enthusiasm, being prompt, having a good attitude, those kinds of things. All those things that really employers are telling us, you could have the skills, you know how to code or you know how to repair an automobile, but if you can't get along with your coworkers, you don't show up on time, and you're not ready to learn, they can't employ you.
Well,
So
members
that's-
of Congress can't get along either, so that takes a lot of work. But now, you are basically, you do not take any funding from government.
Right.
That's right.
Correct.
So it's all a fundraising operation, and you've
Yes.
got a couple of fundraisers coming up in the next 3 or 4 months, right?
Well, the one that's coming up, we have one event that is a fundraiser and one event that's not a fundraiser.
Okay.
The Advocacy Breakfast, which is coming up in April, is part of our ongoing effort to educate the public about children's issues. So every year we bring really outstanding speakers from all around the country to talk to us about interesting issues. This year we have Dr. Walter Gilliam, who is a researcher at the Yale Child Study Center, and he's going to be talking about a study he did about implicit bias in preschools. And we know that children of color have disparate outcomes and disparate impacts of the issues that they're facing, but it starts really young. And so he's going to talk to us about his research there. That's in April 20th. And then in May, we have our benefit gala on May 18th, and we're going to be honoring Eileen Fisher for her work with young people in the community and the Westchester Bank for their support of workforce readiness, among other things.
Okay.
So that's going to be very exciting. All that information is on our website,
Right.
WCA4kids.org.
Right. Now, we have a minute to go.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any message you'd like to send out right now?
Well,
to people
what I
watching?
want to send out and what I'm very excited about is that we see that when issues are presented, people in our community care and they get involved. The gun show issue is the current one that's happening. Monday, there's going to be a vote at the Board of Legislators. But I want to tell people that you as an individual have more impact than you might think you do. And when you call your local legislator, whether it's a county legislator or a state legislator or even a federal legislator, they pay attention. I sometimes quip and say, they work for us. And people who work for you need supervision. So we need to tell them, keep them informed about what we are thinking and what the people are thinking. Local government is the best place to get involved. You have a huge impact. And you can find ways to do it on our website.
Yes. Well, Cora Greenberg, Executive Director of Westchester Children's Association, you have been heard. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you so
appearing
much.
on the program.
Thanks, John.
John Bailey, good night. For People to be Heard.